this is David Liebe Hart, and you're watching Aura Borealis.
Hi, this is David Liebe Hart, and you're watching Aura Borealis.
Aura Borealis.
Aura
Aura Borealis.
Borealis.
The Baltimore Orioles Borealis.
The Baltimore Oriole. Let's say it together.
Okay, yeah. The Baltimore Orioles. You're what? Hey,
the Baltimore
Orioles.
The Baltimore Orioles.
Hey,
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The Baltimore
Oreos.
The Baltimore Orioles.
Hey, this is David Liebe Hart, and you're watching Aura Borealis.
Hey, this is David Liebe Hart, and you're watching Aura Borealis.
We got it.
Thank you.
Live from Fairfax Public Access, it's Aura Borealis. Tonight's guest.
David Liebe Hart.
And now, ladies and gentlemen.
David Liebe Hart.
It's the David Liebe Hart Show!
I float through the stars, traveling very far, but there's no trace of a place of a lady that I painted. Then I see a little planet, so I fly and land on it. Then I see the one for me with many legs, running like a bee. And suddenly I know I'm in love. I'm in love with an insect woman. I'm in love, so in love with an insect woman. Now we are man and wife. She's the love of my life. When we make sweet love, it's like getting this by this bud. She lays dead in my skin. When the spiders hatch, I have a grin. We're a happy family, living in perfect harmony. I'm in love. I'm in love with an insect woman. I'm in love. I'm in love with an insect woman. Thank you. Good to be here in Virginia. It's raining. Mushroom weather. Well, it's good to be here, and it looks like wow. We're right near Washington, D.C. I was so shocked when I was coming in. I saw the train tracks. Unfortunately, Vegemite did not sponsor us. We hope that they will someday. See, I'm going to do the Vegemite song, even though they didn't sponsor us. They're no longer owned by Kraft. They're owned by the same thing that makes the ginger beer. Here we go. Make you feel alright. You gotta have Vegemite to make you feel alright. Vegemite is better than peanut butter. Vegemite is better than any other. It's like the salted sea. It's tasting for you and me. Vegemite is better than peanut butter. Everything you make, you gotta put it on your potatoes and gravy. You gotta put it on everything you take. Vegemite comes from Australia. Vegemite is eaten by the kangaroo. Vegemite is good for all you say and do. Vegemite Because you are what you eat, you are what you think. Thank you. After that, we're supposed to bring out Chip.
You don't want to do the dance?
Well, after we do the dip, we're supposed to bring out Chip.
We have no set list.
Okay.
You know this.
Well, we're supposed to bring
You
out
want to bring out Chip instead?
Chip! And then we'll do the set. Then we'll do the dance like David.
Okay.
I got my little son. We read every 3 songs. We bring out a puppet. Okay?
Let's hear it for Chip!
Thank you.
Hi, Chip.
Hi, you gotta be careful with me.
I've been careful with you.
I take constructive criticism. I make mistakes too. We love you, but you gotta be careful with me. Okay, it's good to see you. It's good to be here. Yeah. The guy did a song, but he got away with something I can't do. Tim and Eric won't let me do it, and Warner Brothers won't let me do any of my original songs. So I have to do parallels. I have to write all new songs, sing the same thing.
We got a song to do called
Dad,
And Lad.
Dad,
And Lad.
Dad, Lad.
Okay. And I want to thank you all for coming in the rain and putting on those umbrella mushrooms so you can stay dry. Here's a song called Dan and Lad. I go out of my way for my son. I reward him when he does right. Punish him when he does wrong. So we can go on and do right in the light. Gotta have patience with your child. You gotta have a patience with your children. You gotta love them too.
started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Aura Borealis, right here on Radio Fairfax, Fairfax Public Access. I'm your host, Ryan Watson. I have a very special guest in the studio today, a legend of public access, the puppet master himself, David Liebe Hart.
Thank you. I did a public access show from my church for 30 years. There's a lot of old conservative people that didn't appreciate it, but I went on with it anyway because the children are our future of the world. Started in 1988, and the city of Los Angeles got rid of public access completely in 2008. So it had almost a long run. You can see the shows on the internet now. If you go to Junior Teaching Bible Lesson Program or Junior Christian Science Bible Lesson Show. And I had my own original music on the show, and it ran for a long time. And now I'm traveling doing music at the different nightclubs and colleges, and
Excellent.
and I did Tim and Eric Awesome Show, great job for 5 seasons as an actor, puppeteer, musician, and a comedian and a songwriter.
Love that show.
Wrote all the songs I performed on the show. I also did 7 seasons of Check It Out with Dr. Steve Brule. I was supposed to tour with Tim and Eric, but at the last moment, they said they didn't have the funds to take me, and I was disappointed, and so were the fans.
Absolutely.
Ron Oster was supposed to come for the Tim and Eric 10-year anniversary, but, some things happen. I also had this year has been a setback of disappointments, but I know the best is yet to come.
Absolutely.
And and our trials make us stronger.
Yeah.
I had my religious music refused from my own church. I've been playing organ and solo singing at the Christian Science church I was raised in ever since I was a kid, and playing for the Sunday school. And then I used to play organ at my grandmother Schroeder's church as well, and direct choir. And my hymns that I've written are with CCLI, Christian Copyright Licensing. And then I have my hymns with One Licensing, which is GIA Publishing Company. I also do contemporary music. You can hear all my songs on your computer or laptop or cell phone. If you go to Spotify, Google Play, CD Baby, and go to David Liebe Hart. The correct spelling of my last name is Liebehart, artist. I'm ready for you to ask me some questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I just want to say I am a huge fan, and I'm very honored to have you here today.
Thank you.
I wanted to start out with how you got it started in the entertainment business, acting, and everything else.
Well, my parents paid for me to get in plays, and they paid for me to take acting classes at Goodman Theater. I was supposed to have a talent scout named Marjorie Lord, who was an actress, and she was a Christian Scientist like my parents. Mm-hmm. She, Marjorie Lord, saw me doing Porky and Bess and Raisin in the Sun in Chicago way back in 1960. Wow. And she paid for me to come to Los Angeles to go for a cold reading for the Andy Griffith Show. I was supposed to be Ron Howard's co-star.
Wow.
But my parents didn't want me to get into show business at a young age. Mm. And it was a very, after Danny Thomas paid our way, my sisters and my mom and dad and me to go to Southern California. Mm. My parents were ditching Danny Thomas, and it was very disappointing because I really wanted to be on that show a lot.
Right. But you did eventually have, you got roles after that.
Well, I didn't break into, when I came out to California in the 70s and to pursue an acting career, And there I met Robin Williams. He at the time was a Christian Scientist, and he became Episcopalian. And him and I had a friendship, and we did stand-up comedy at the Comedy Store, improvisation.
Yeah. Legendary place.
We did. Mitzi used to own it, but I heard she passed on. Shirley Hemfield did What's Happening, got her start from there. A lot of comedians, stand-up comedians, got their start from the Comedy Store and improvisation in Los Angeles. Yeah. A lot of producers and casting directors go there to see talent.
Wow.
So I started doing stand-up comedy with Robin Williams, and I'll never forget the day when Gary Marshall says, I want Robin Williams to do one Happy Days, and I'm going to give him his own show called Mork and Mindy, doing the same orc act he did on the stage with you, doing stand-up comedy.
Wow.
Well, but he didn't want me. He said, I don't want your Daffy Duck friend. I want Robin Williams, not your Daffy Duck African-American friend. But I felt hurt about it. So then Robin Williams says, well, if my friend David can't come along, he's my Sammy Davis Jr. with the Frank Sinatra, then I don't want to do the show. So Gary Marshall had me to do the warm-ups before the shows began for Happy Days, Blanskin's Beauties, and Laverne and Shirley. I did the warm-ups before the shows began for 4 years.
Wow.
He never cast me into anything.
Jeez.
And finally, Betty Garrett stuck up for me. She was the landlady on Laverne and Shirley, and she had just married Laverne's dad. And she said, I'm a woman's lip. This isn't fair. You promised this African-American actor that's been an intern at Paramount Studios on Gower Street that you'd cast him in the shows, and you didn't do it. And so Gary Marshall told her she criticized him again. She'd be written off the show. So Betty Garrett was written off Laverne and Shirley. Yeah. They moved Laverne and Shirley to be filmed like it was being filmed in Los Angeles. Yeah. They wrote Betty Garrett off, and they replaced her with a Swedish actress. And
the last 2 seasons of that show, I believe.
Yeah, for the last 2 seasons. I didn't think that was fair.
Yeah.
And I feel we're supposed to have freedom of speech. So prior to that, I was on the Gong Show and won twice. I know they brought it back.
Wow,
and then awesome. I got gonged on the 3rd show. I did Star Search. Yeah. I did 48 Hours. I played JJ's art student on Good Times.
Wow.
I played Della Reese's son on Chico and the Man, and then Freddie Prinze killed himself.
Right.
And they had a spinoff called Caldella, but it didn't take. I like the people to send out positive prayers for her because she's very ill at the time and she needs our love. I need you to behold the Christ in her and pray that her health recovers and send out positive vibrations because she's not feeling well, and she's a wonderful performer. She was on Touched by an Angel, and she was also a minister. She was a minister from a church that was a spinoff from Unity called the Church of Better Living with Johnny Coleman, and then she had her own Church of Better Living that met at a Lutheran church in Inglewood. And Della Reese is just a wonderful, talented person. I was more than honored to have the pleasure to perform with her and J.J. Walker and Tim and Eric. So what happened is then in the 1980s, Bert Stillston did Kukla, Friend, and Ollie. He was a Christian Scientist like me. He was my Christian Science Sunday school teacher back in Chicago at 17th Church of Christ Scientists that was in downtown Chicago on Wacker and Wabash Boulevard. The church looks like a flying saucer and the downtown Chicago. And there I had Bert Stillston as a Sunday school teacher. Before then, they met in the Opera House. And he taught us the Beatitudes and the Ten Commandments with Kukla, Friend, and Ollie. And then when I went to family reunions in Washington, D.C., I had Jim Henson as a Sunday school teacher.
That's amazing.
And he had his own local show in Washington, D.C. called Fran and Friends with Kermit the Frog and rock puppets.
Wow.
And then he went on to do the Jimmy Dean show with the dog puppet on there. And then he went on to do Sesame Street. And he did the Muppets.
Yeah.
And he was a very brilliant, talented person.
Absolutely.
And I was sorry that he got took him. He passed on, but he was a great role model to me. And then I had wonderful. My cousin Phyllis McKinnon was a member of Fifth Church of Christ Scientists that used to be on the corner of La Brea and Hollywood Boulevard. Vivian Vance went there. That played on I Love Lucy. And I got to do gardening and yard work for her. She owned 2 homes. She owned a home in the Hollywood Hills and Malibu. And she's a wonderful lady. And they had a go-away party for her in '78 that I was invited to. And I met Lucille Ball in person. But unfortunately, Lucille Ball didn't like me too well. She pulled the chair under me, and I fell to the ground.
What?
And she says, Gary Coleman's going to become a star, not you.
Oh, my goodness.
You're nothing to me. And I was really hurt by that because I was a big fan of I Love Lucy back then. And then Vivian Vance says you have to forgive Lucille Ball. She's been mean to me. She only had me once or twice on Here's Lucy in the Lucy Show, and she replaced me with another actress named Mary Craft. And I had to do a lot of forgiveness with Lucille Ball. She says, Vivian Vance says, now I'm used like salt on a dinner table. And I was on I Love Lucy for 8 episodes, and the Lucy Hour show for another 6 years. And so I got to meet Mickey Rooney in person. Cool. He was a Christian Scientist, but he switched over to the Church of Better Living. And he was a very brilliant man, and I met a lot of oldies but goodies entertainers that were good role models to me, and the best actress I met face to face was Doris Day.
Oh yeah.
Doris Day was a Christian Scientist, and she was a member of the Beverly Hills Christian Science Church. And I asked her one day, I saw her at church, I says, what can I do to become successful like you? You've done many movies. You've been a singer and a songwriter, and I've just admired you for years. And she says, David, you need to know that you're success in action, to know that you're a winner, not a loser. And she told me never to give up. And she said to know that I could do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me. Now, I want to get something straight. Mm-hmm. They get my church mixed up with Scientology. Right. Christian Science is not Scientology. Christian Scientist was founded by Mary Baker Eddy. Scientology was founded by L. Rudd Hubbard. I don't cut anybody's religion down. Being biracial, part German and African American and Scottish, I love all people equally, right. And Irish. So to each his own, whatever rocks your boat. But and anyway, so that stuck with me, and whenever I thought positive, like Doris Day told me to stay, and they have a saying in Christian Science. Through Christ's precious love, these efforts are crowned with success. Whenever I thought positive and held the right thought, I would get work. And Ben Berwin, who was the casting director of the Absolutely production, he called me and he says, I want you to come in for a cold reading. When you do acting, you get called in for a cold reading. Right. And I read for the Tim and Eric Awesome Show, great job. Mm-hmm. And then they asked me to write a off-the-wall song about aliens, and I wrote the song SALAME. Love it. And they liked it, and I come from a family of school teachers. I'm going to tell you some interesting history about Virginia that you probably don't know. Yeah. The Germans helped free the black slaves through the Underground Railroad, through the Quaker, Lutheran Church, and the Mennonite Church. And my family was involved in that on my Caucasian side, and
Wow.
I'd like to see him do a correct movie about the Underground Railroad, because because Roots didn't tell the complete story, and 12 Years of a Slave did tell the correct story,
Yeah.
and they didn't, and that's very important.
Right.
My family is originally from Pennsylvania. My dad's side, Ohio, and in Connersville, Indiana. And my mom's side is from Kansas City, Missouri, Oklahoma, and there's all the way up to North Carolina.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did the Tim and Eric Awesome Show. Great job. I helped James Squall get on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And
were you already doing puppets well before?
I was doing puppets on the Junior Christian Science Bible Lesson Show for 30 years,
yeah.
a long run. I faced a lot of persecution for it.
Hmm.
I ran across a lot of conservative racists that didn't like me doing the show, like Dorothy Estes, and she tried to shut the show down, and so did Jane Dolan. But I says, our young people are the future of the world. And so I did the show anyway, and I faced a lot of persecution from rednecks and conservative people, but I went on with it, and I showed a diversity in there because I had Asian ministers on there, I had Hispanic ministers on there, Catholic priests on there. I didn't just have Christian Scientists on the show, and the show became very popular. It was aired in England, and it aired all over the United States. Different public, I would air all over. It was very popular, and it was a labor of love. I got paid nothing for it.
Right.
And then I had a wonderful, and then there was another guy that encouraged me to do the Junior Christian Science Bible Lesson Show, who also was from Canada. He was well known in Canada. He did a puppet show called The Friendly Giant. Since my Caucasian side of the family freed slaves from the South up to Canada, I have family that are part German and Algonquin Indian, and part French Canadian, the Perriers and Lamars up in Canada. And I'd go to family reunions in Canada. And there where I had a wonderful Sunday school teacher that did the Friendly Giant puppet. And he says, we need to attract young people to the Christian Science Church because it's now died down to seniors and older people. Mm-hmm. So he gave me some puppets. Jim Henson gave me some puppets.
Wow.
And they all met me at UCLA and had a meeting with me, Jim Henson, Bert Stilston, and the guy that did the Friendly Giant. And I agreed to do the puppet show. And they went to other Christian Science entertainers, but they didn't want to do it. The Christian Science Church sold the Monitor Channel to the Discovery Channel, and the show was originally supposed to go on the Monitor Channel, but the Monitor Channel was short-lived.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
wow, that's awesome.
So and then I had positive entertainers that told me to stay away from drugs and alcohol. I had experience of meeting Frank Sinatra in person.
Really?
And that was exciting. I also, in between acting jobs, I do busting, which calls street entertaining.
Right.
And they are street entertaining. It's becoming an extinct art because they're stopping entertainers from doing it.
Yeah.
I lost La Brea Tar Pits last year, where I did portrait sketches, and I worked as a street musician. Even with a permit, they said it was not allowed anymore.
Jeez.
And then went to Santa Monica Pier this year after paying for a permit with my picture on it. So I'm still at the Hollywood Bowl and the Music Center when I'm not working for Tim and Eric. But I did the Tim and Eric special, and I was supposed to tour with Tim and Eric, but they said they didn't have the money to take me, and they have 10 shows, 5 on Comedy Central and 5 on Cartoon Network.
Right.
They have Nathan With You, Decker Classified, Tim and Eric Nighttime Stories. I was supposed to be on season 1 of Tim and Eric Nighttime Stories, and they decided not to use me at the last moment.
Jeez.
Then they called me and said they wanted me to be on the show again, and they decided they wanted older African American guy. So I'm going to think positive to know when one door closes, another one opens.
Absolutely.
And if they call me back to work, I'm happy to work for them. I'm grateful that I did the 10-year anniversary. They had me to use a Bluey Louie the raccoon, and I wrote a song about the worm and the soil.
Yeah. How do you come up with your puppets? By the way?
Well, I didn't make all my puppets. Like I said, Jim Henson, Bert Stilston, and the guy that did Kukla, Friend, and Ollie, they had puppets that they used for commercials or puppets they made that they didn't use in any show productions.
Right.
And they gave me the leftovers to use on the Junior Christian Science Bible
That's
Lesson
awesome.
show.
Yeah.
I made up a puppet of my own that's on the show called Lamb Dog. He's part lamb and part dog.
Yeah.
And he's on the Junior Christian Science Bible Lesson show. Well, the new shows were called Junior Teaching Bible Lesson Program because the Christian Science Church said that was their trademark, the name Christian Science. So I discontinued using the name Christian Science, and all my shows that was put on their Junior Teaching Bible Lesson Program. And so, but it was a labor of love. I feel that they should have been honored that a member of their church was doing something, and I was disappointed.
Yeah.
I just recently had another fallback that at the last moment, they refused all my music from the New Christian Science hymnal, which was heartbreaking. I wanted my music in the hymnal. And I was dating a Lutheran girl, and I was very fond of her, named Sonia Rude, and we had a wonderful relationship until her pastor told her she'd burn in hell if she dated a black man. So she quit speaking to me after that, and we did music. I did music together at her Lutheran church, Hope Lutheran Church, even though I was a Christian Scientist, as I used to do music at my grandmother Schroeder's Lutheran Church. And her pastor broke us up. He kicked us both out of the church because he was against interracial dating back in Hollywood, California, Hope Lutheran Church. I do a lot of forgiveness and releasing about that.
Absolutely.
And I've still been going on strong, you know. So my last job I had, I was a soloist and musician at Fourth Church of Christ Scientists in Long Beach, California, where Nick Gibbs had me doing music for a long time. He wouldn't let me do any of my original songs. He had me to do only the traditional.
Yeah.
I'm ready for you to ask me some questions if you like.
So let's talk about your music since we were on that subject. Is that how you started making music, or were you always interested?
I started as a church musician. I started playing piano for the Christian Science Sunday School. There was a woman named Zephra who was my Sunday school teacher at 8th Church of Christ Scientists that used to be on Michigan and 44th Street. It's now another denomination. And Zephra taught me how to play the Christian Science hymns on piano. And next thing I knew, I was playing Mama Easter when she was living, had me to play for the Sunday school there. And then when my parents moved to Park Forest, Illinois, Mrs. Volk gave me voice lessons to sing opera and taught me, and she owned them. And then Miss Waller taught me how to play piano to the different Christian Science hymns, and Kathy Case, that were members of First Church of Christ Scientists in Park Forest, Illinois, and they gave me music lessons. And I started doing the traditional Christian Science hymns, and I started putting the Christian Science hymns to contemporary rock and roll music. Because their words are all in the public domain. I can't understand why the Christian Science Church has put their copyright on Amazing Grace and Take My Life and Let It Be, and they're in all the different church hymnals, and those words are public domain. I belong to the Organ Guild of America and the Hymn Society. And even though, Sherry, that you were president of the Hymn Society, you never returned my phone calls. And Sherry is over the Baptist Seminary, and she's the president of the Hymn Society and the Organ Guild. And I forgive you, but you never returned my phone calls. That is, as my grandmother Schroeder would say, that's ill-mannered and rude. I have to forgive you about that.
Well, let this be a call to action, Sherry.
And then in Virginia, there was this very talented guy I met. He repaired all my trains, and he did the best job painting my trains and putting my kits together. Don at Model Memories, and I told him once I was part German and African American, and he didn't know he didn't know he was talking to a black guy all these years on the phone.
Jeez.
And he got upset with me. And but anyway, I want to thank you, Don, from Model Memories for repairing my trains, even though you don't want to work with me anymore. I do thank you for repairing on and painting on my trains for 8 years. You made a lot of money off of me.
Jeez. Some people.
Yeah, I send you all my love, and I've even referred you to a lot of customers. So I wish you the best, even though you decided to go separate ways.
Let this be a message to those out there. You shouldn't live with hate in your heart. If you fear something, maybe do some research, maybe get to know people. I mean, there's no reason to hate other people.
Well, Mrs. Eddy says love must triumph over hate. Well, and we just need to love one another. That's what the Bible teaches us. Mary Baker Eddy says, my weary hope tries to realize that happy day when man shall recognize the science of Christ and love his neighbor as himself. I can't understand why different churches don't like each other, and they teach the same Bible.
Right.
And I have a cousin who, his name is Mr. Drucker, and he's a Foursquare minister, and he didn't like it because I was Christian Science. And when they teach the same Bible.
Right. Same book. Jeez.
The same way to live right and do right and think right.
Yep.
Even the Jewish people. I had a best friend named Eric Siegel. My new booking manager is Jewish, Jonah Motion. He's Polish, but he's atheist. He's not a religious person. But he gets upset if I make copies of things because he says I'm destroying the forest, and he's a beacon. I respect him for his things. But I did music at the Jewish synagogue. I had a best friend named Eric Siegel. He taught me how to sing in Hebrew. So on Saturday, I led the singing for a Jewish synagogue and did songs in Hebrew, and that was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I had wonderful friends that were Jewish in the entertainment business, like Nancy Walker. She helped me get extra work on Rhoda, and she replaced, she was good friends with Vivian Vance, and she was a wonderful lady. But she's passed on.
Yeah.
But her legend lives on. She played Rhoda's mother on the show.
Wow. All right, well, before we run out of time, I do want to talk about your new album.
I have a new album out called, it's right here.
Yeah, we have the tape.
It's called Ghost Rangers, Space Rangers.
Space Ranger.
And it's coming out September the 8th. I wrote some interesting songs. I wrote a song about a railroad that I used to take to family reunions called the Erie-Lackawanna Railroad. And my family got kind of lazy and didn't want to drive to the family reunions in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or Erie, Pennsylvania. So we took the Erie-Lackawanna Railroad from Chicago to Erie, Pennsylvania, and to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was a maroon and yellow and gray train. It was they had the best meals on it. It was a fast train, and I liked it better than the Lakeshore Limited that the New York Central had. Yeah. And then we took it. I had family that lived in New Jersey, and we would take the Erie-Lackawanna commuter trains, and they had these old commuter trains from the 20s that ran by overhead wire, and they retired them all. They're probably at all the museums. And my ex-wife sold my Erie-Lackawanna trains, and Overland only made 100 of them, and they've been so hard to find. So if anybody out there has a collection of the Erie-Lackawanna cars, I'd like to buy them from you. I Model HO.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then there's also a song on there about a ghost frog or something.
Yeah, like I lived in a haunted house, and 2 haunted houses. First at 8136 South Ellis. I lived in Chicago, Illinois, at 8136 South Ellis. There were 3 German shepherds that got shot as watchdogs. This policeman that owned the fourplex, the building's still there at 8136 South Ellis in Chicago, and these orange-figured ghosts would tickle me and lick me when I was a kid. And and they would throw the silverware around. They'd play the piano in the basement. They were devious characters, and they tickled me and my sister. So the song I wrote about them are on my album called Astronaut. And then I stayed with my cousin Phyllis McKinnon that worked at Wright-Patterson's Air Force Base, and she was a secretary, an Army secretary, and she was telling me about a lot of the back engineering technology, and she told me that she showed me the computers, the cell phones, the laptops way back in the 70s when I used to live with her for 15 years, and she says all this back engineering technology would be in every home and business by year 2000.
Jeez.
She died in 1992, but what she predicted came true.
Wow.
And she told me that it was alien technology, so it was fiber optic.
Yeah.
And I experienced being abducted at 1117 Westwood
glad you
Drive in
brought this
Park
up.
Forest, Illinois. And what happened with the fish tank? Okay, I was going to Adventures Unlimited, which was a Christian Science camp. My sister forgot to feed my frogs that became tadpoles and my 300-gallon fish tank. All my goldfish and crappies and soft-shell turtles all died. And the only one that came back to haunt me was this green frog. I felt the figure of an image of a frog that would stand and he would lick his tongue at me, and he would like he was angry at me. And he would talk to me telepathically. I didn't like it that you didn't feed me, and I died. Mm-hmm. And he haunted me ever since I lived in that house. He was even in that house when my parents sold the home to, my sister sold the home behind my back, and my uncle, and I was supposed to inherit the home, and I sent my sisters and mother money to pay the mortgage on it when I started making money. But I have to do a lot of forgiveness about that one.
Right.
Here's a song about the frog that haunted the shit out of me. My parents moved to Park Forest, Illinois. I saw the most strangest thing. I saw those frogs looking at me, dead frogs looking at me. Said, what are you doing? This is my territory. I've been here before your family and parents too. You don't belong in this home, it's my place. A dead frog looking at me. He's the ghost frog looking at me. He's there, I can see through him. I see all you do and say. A dead ghost frog looking at you. I'm a ghost frog looking at you. I play with your puppets and toys too. I see you when you don't do your homework. I'm a dead frog looking at you. I'm a ghost frog looking at you. You have a pretty attractive sisters too. If I was a human, I would want to date them too. A dead frog looking at you. I'm a ghost frog looking at you. Nature painted me green too. You can see through me, I'm telling you. A dead frog looking at you. I'm a ghost frog looking at you. I go in the dark, I see everything you do. I hunt you, and everything you say and do, a dead frog looking at you. Thank you.
Now, the supernatural, you mentioned aliens also. These are recurring themes in your music.
Yeah, the things I've experienced, and they're real. Many people have experienced the ghost phenomenon, and they even had on different reality shows and different shows on the.
It's getting really popular.
And it's real. There are people. Their ghosts are people that just don't want to leave this dimension, and they come back in different forms and shapes. I had a weird experience happen to be about my dad coming back to me and visiting me. after my wife left me for a younger guy, Roberto Julius Gonzalez, I've had to wait and love more for every hate and fear. No ill since God is good and lost is gain, as Mary Baker Eddy says. I had to forgive 7 times 70. Well, what happened after my wife left me? I got mesmerized, what they say in Christian Science, evil animal magnetism, by porn, and I had to really work hard to overcome that. I had to work with the Bible. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, and really overcome that limitation, because it's just as wrong as tobacco or beer or alcohol.
It's a serious issue, and people.
It's bad,
Yeah.
And when I finally overcame, before I overcame that, an alien named Laurent came in my life and told me, he was telepathic, and he says, what you're looking at on the TV is not acceptable, and your parents wouldn't appreciate it. And then my dad came back from the dead and slammed the door and said, I raised you better than that, and kept on turning off the TV.
Wow.
And I finally was able to overcome that, but that was a hard one.
Jeez. And then
addiction is a hard thing.
Absolutely. Get help if you need it. Don't
Yeah,
be afraid.
you do. You got to get help. You gotta, when you have a problem, you need to overcome it. You need to be overcomer and a winner.
Right. And then on the subject of aliens, I want to know a little bit more about.
Well,
that.
I didn't tell you this. This is really deep. On my Caucasian side, I'm related to the Wright brothers and President Grant. They're originally from Ohio. And I don't know, Ohio and Pennsylvania, there's something there.
Yeah.
Jonathan Winters gave me comedy lessons from the improvisation, and he was giving comedy classes at the improvisation, and he was a very brilliant comedian. He was from Ohio. And my grandmother told me that Orville and Wilbur Wright got back engineering technology to make the airplane from aliens.
Wow.
So did a guy in France that made the airplanes a little bit earlier. That shows you that. And the aliens have been giving us back engineering technology for years, but we don't give them any credit for anything. Right. The Bible took out stories that talked about aliens called the pseudepigrapher. The Hindu books, the Kinshur, the East Indian books talk about visitations with extraterrestrials. They call them angels, but they're real.
And flying craft.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then can we talk a little bit more about your abduction really quick?
Okay, my parents moved to Park Forest, Illinois. And it was the first year, this year we moved there in 1968. I stayed in a cottage that was connected with the house. It had a patio that led to the house. And I felt something just grab the covers off of me, and I was taken up in a glow of light, and I was operated on, and tubes were put up my nose. It was very painful, and there used to be a circle around my arm, and they put a tracking device in me, and they operated on me, and they told me telepathically through thought, we're not going to kill you or hurt you. We're just going to see what makes you tick. And he says, we normally abduct white beings, but you're the first black being we abducted. Jeez. And so I was gone for 2 weeks, and right where the UFO landed in back of the yard, nothing could grow there. It was a huge circle that was like 40 feet long. Yeah. And snow would melt on it. Nothing would grow on it because the radioactive had burned any kind of life form out of there. So my dad and my dad was a landscaper and a school teacher. We had to dig out something like 8 feet of dirt, and we had to remove all that dirt and put new dirt in the backyard before something could grow there.
Jeez. And you hear about stuff like that a lot. It's
and
very common.
And then I had another experience. I used to be allowed to sell my portraits at La Brea Tar Pits. And right after my grandmother passed on, she said that I was going to have a visitation of an extraterrestrial. And lo and behold, a woman came up to me, and she told me her name was Jezadel Ardias, and she had a alien protector with her named Quetzalcoatl. He was kind of a heavy-set guy. And she told me she'd been studying me in the park for something like 6 years in her spaceship. And she told me she came from Star Corridor, which was 411 light years from Earth. And she looked like Wonder Woman. And Betty Page, I wrote a song about her called Corinthian Honk.
Yeah.
You can hear the song on my on 2 albums, my Going to the Light album that I did with Jonah Motion, and you can hear it in my punk rock album called Public Access. I wrote an album about public access.
That's awesome.
And you can hear it on the internet. You go to Google Play, Spotify, CD Baby. All the hymns that were refused from the Christian Science hymnal, you can hear them also on Google Play, Spotify, and CD Baby and Apple. If you go to Christian Hymns and Praise, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, and Ezekiel see a UFO. And if you want to use them at your church, you can go to heartandhartman.com. My family name used to have a MANN at the end of it. When it's one N, it's Jewish. When it's two N's, it's German.
Right. Excellent. Well, we can play all of those songs we mentioned here today on this radio show portion of the show.
Well, you're welcome to just download the music off the internet. And I was in a punk rock band with Adam Papagan for 6 years. And unfortunately, he's a very talented guy, and he helped promote my career, but we had some misunderstandings. I had to do a lot of forgiving with him, and he had to bless and release and forgive him and wish him the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been
you're welcome.
It's been a
Thanks
real
for
pleasure.
having me. If I ever come back this way, I will come here again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'd love to have you come do some songs, come do some
I'm
puppetry next time.
open to it all.
Excellent.
I used to do a public access show for 30 years.
Yeah.
And you can see it on the internet, Junior Christian Science Bible Lesson Show. Just before you go, if any of your churches have a license with CCLI, Christian Copyright Licensing, or GIA Publishing Company, one licensing, you can download my sheet music and use it at heartandhartman.com. That's HARTANDHARTMANN.com. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming.
Adios, as the Latinos would say, and Dankeschön for having me. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. You just heard it here. This was David Liebe Hart here in the studio. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody at home. Check out his website. Check it all out.
Artbyliebehart.com.
Artbyliebehart.com.
Artbyliebehart.com. ARTBYLIEBEHART.com.
Art by Liebe Hart.
Yeah, and I'm touring all over the back east. Look at my tour, artbyliebehart.com. Come and meet me. Some of the places we gone to, like we were in Richmond, Virginia. We only had 20 people show up, so come out there and see me. I have some good talent to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thanks so much for watching.
Now I've got my other young'un, my other Garfield for you. I got my little critter for you. You know him. I've got a gift for you. SALAME.
Surfer Jason the cat.
Wow. Thank you for being careful with me. You handled me very nicely.
Oh, you're welcome, Jason.
We got a song to do that you all like. I don't know the name of those critters.
They're aliens.
Hey, let's do the song. Go into the light.
What's wrong with your voice tonight, Jason?
You put the air conditioner on so cold you make a popsicle out of my throat.
Your voice sounds totally weird.
You made a popsicle out of my throat. You got the air conditioner on so cold.
Sorry.
I forgive you.
Okay, we're gonna do the song SALAME. Jason, look out. Going to the light. Hell, next we made SALAME, SALAME. Bob, if you take, don't know, see you there. it grows like a strong tree and power. Yes, that knowledge, learning about aliens from the other world. Be a learner, not a know-it-all. That's what the Corinthians say. White is the white, yes, right, yes, no chance. The aliens are here. Going to the light, till next Wednesday, SALAME, SALAME. Far is the day, and oh no, see you there. Man's going to the light, till next Wednesday. And greed, and deceit, aliens are real. They gave us all our technology. Now the things they'll promise goodbye. The Caribbeans come from a planet 400,000 light years away from Earth, teaching us all about life. They'll learn how to know it all. That's what the Corinthians say. 5 years of light years, back in no head. The aliens are dead. The aliens are dead. The aliens are dead. Going to the light till next we meet SALAME. Going to the light till next we meet SALAME. Going to the light till next we meet SALAME. Going to the